to make sure this thing connect. And we are live on the Anything Goes podcast, episode number 23. I'm joined with my good friend and my favorite progressive, Mr. Zacchariah. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, King. How are you?
Not too bad, live.
Good to hear.
And as usual, we have to do our promotion.
I appreciate
Mr.
that.
Zacchariah. He streams on Twitch Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So
That's right.
yes, now, so what's the schedule looking like for this week?
Well, I was supposed to stream yesterday, but I could not. So this Tuesday coming, I'm looking to stream what I meant to stream yesterday, which is going to be some Hitman 2. Thursday, I haven't quite nailed down because I tend to be pretty freeform with it. Might be some Paladins, which is probably the game I stream the most. Either some Paladins or some Dead by Daylight. And then Saturday, some more Hitman 2. I like to do Tuesdays and Thursdays, keep it to some multiplayer stuff, some light casual stuff. Some Paladins, Apex, DBD. Saturdays, I like to do my little highlights and my single player highlights of games that I find intriguing or just visually appealing. And yeah, so that's how it's looking this week.
All right.
Hopefully.
All right.
Once everything sticks to plan.
Yeah, man. I mean, we live in some crazy times, but we do appreciate your streaming, Zach, and I appreciate the support. See again a good fan base, man. The fan base is growing quite nicely.
Yeah, a community of fellow streamers who, we're all just supporting each other. So shout out to Nobot Unicorn, Dream Stepper, everyone out there who's supporting me. I try to support them, and we're just doing our own thing,
Exactly, and hopefully bigger and better things to come.
Absolutely.
Of course, we got my boy Tig, a Liberated Conversations podcast, available on all your favorite streaming platforms. And we had to bring Mr. Zacchariah on today. He's a man he has interest in this topic. And
you could say I'm an enthusiast.
He's an enthusiast in this topic. I'm quite the amateur in this one.
Oh, me too. But it does interest me.
This all sparked off a week ago. I had the conversation with him, and then also on Friday I was having a good conversation with a friend of mine. Michaela, we were talking about the future and how a lot more things are going digital and stuff, and it had me thinking. We should talk about what they call the digital man. We're living in a world where everyone's connected online. We're using more online purchases. We are having smart devices. We're also seeing, due to the current situation, a lot of what called health apps. So some people, it's a very controversial topic. You see in Italy and France, it's not going very well with the public. So we are seeing what I call the digital man. We're seeing a lot more of a lot of things that were once physical now transition to a digital space. You're seeing also, I believe it's in Michigan. I could be wrong, but there's a state in America that's having a digital driver's license, no more physical.
Interesting.
I kind of had it stayed in my head. I forgot it, but I will check it.
It sounds like something you'd see in one of the more "quote unquote" progressive states, but I could be wrong.
Not a progressive state either. That was not what was kind of shocking to me. That is being tried there. So I want to ask you, what's your thoughts on this? You think it's good, bad?
I don't really have an opinion in terms of whether it's good or bad, because like I said, I'm an enthusiast in the subject matter, but that really just comes from my appreciation for the type of fiction you'd find it in. The cyberpunk genre, and I know that word kind of bristles some people lately, but the genre as itself, not just one little franchise, really touches on the idea of transhumanism, as it's called, basically we're taking our evolution into our own hands, and I think we're at a point where it's too early to tell whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Like, I think there are people who say it's subjectively a bad thing, but it's where does that come from? I think that comes typically from people who, how do I put this? Like, I guess naturalists are the word, and that could stem from anything like their religion or just any kind of personal ethics. They think that we as people shouldn't be messing with our biological hardware. But as for me, I can see the benefit of it because something as simple as uh, an amputee getting a prosthetic, that in and of itself is a kind of transhumanism. It's just how far are we willing to take it.
Exactly. And I think it's a very touchy subject because people don't like change,
Hmm.
for better or for worse. And
Definitely not.
yeah, and I still think there are a lot of loopholes in the situation, especially
Hmm.
if you go down like the green pass route. A lot of people are saying it's maybe a form of a Jim Crow. Some people are wondering, even if they do go along with it right now, can there be locked up a
Hmm.
society for maybe disagreeing with the government and another issue, or
Hmm.
can a business come and say, hey, that YouTube kind of strict, so we gotta use a code of language, but
Hmm.
you received what the government is giving you, but to enter my
Hmm.
private business, you need something
Hmm.
additional. And can that something
Yeah.
additional be seen as causing a bit of classism because it would cost $10,000 to receive? I'm just throwing out scenarios.
Hmm.
So, how do you think is the best way to navigate this new digital world? Do you think we need more government regulation? Do you think that it should be more up to the individual? Do you think that we should openly more take a more libertarian stance on it that say, hey, it's a digital ID, but it's open. There's not many barriers, regardless. It's just another form. You can have your physical still if you want to be old school,
Hmm.
but you can also have your
Hmm.
digital if you want to be more modern and hip. What's your thoughts on it, man?
I think it's important to distinguish that it's one of those things where, because the idea of basically upgrading man to a more future proof or futuristic state, talking about whether it's a matter of government regulation or a matter of personal responsibility or whether it's something that may become required in order to be a contributing part of society. And you quite aptly compared it to something that is very currently happening. Like you said, we can really only reference it when we're touching on it, but I think people understand what we're talking about. And I think it's important to recognize that this, at least to me, this is the kind of thing, at least right now, that one, it should be kept to an individual choice, i.e., the choice to get it done. Like if you wanted some kind of augmentation
Mm-hmm.
or some kind of upgrade, whatever you want to call it, some type of digital implant, I think that should be a personal choice. However, I think there should be not necessarily government intervention, but regulation of practices in order to make sure people are safe when making the decision, because it's something like going for cosmetic surgery.
Right.
Even that in and of itself, it's like if a woman wants a breast augmentation, she is adding to her body beyond what she was born with. It's taking the same concept but to a more, I guess,
Extreme.
extreme level. But she still needs to go to a doctor who is
Who's
licensed.
licensed?
Who
Right.
exactly she needs to go, and this doctor needs to go through channels and steps to get this licensing. They need to be educated in medical school. They need to be in good standing, that they didn't have any malpractice suits. They need to have a valid license to practice medicine and to practice surgery. So I think it can't just be one or the other. It's a case where it, much like with most things, I believe if it's your body and if it's not harming anyone else, it's your right to do with it as you so please. And if you wanted to get some kind of mechanical or cybernetic or digital augmentation, whatever is possible in this day and age, then that is your right. And if you can find someone who, one, is qualified to do it and two, is willing to do it, then by all means. But when it comes to using the idea of a digital upgrade, like some sort of digital ID, or you know, some kind of card implanted in a chip in your arm that you need to scan in order to access basic services and commodities. That is like, I have no knowledge, or I have little knowledge and understanding of the process of what of when a government decides to make something the standard. But I believe that we really shouldn't be in a position where we should start worrying about the government decides, oh well, now if you want to be able to go to the bank or go to the supermarket, you need this chip, and instead of a credit card, you'll now have this chip in your arm that you will scan, and you can only conduct business with this chip. From my observation of the functioning world, typically governments are very slow to react to change, and I'm not saying they're against it, but when you see things progressing, it usually takes one place that's really progressive to implement it, and then the rest of the world starts catching on. So maybe if someday in the future, whether near or far, we see some kind of country say, hey, you know, we're going to start a trial process, and they always do these things in trials. Whenever you find that governments are changing the understood and the common systems that they've functioned with for decades, they try these things in trial processes first. So no government, I think, is going to say one day, yeah, everyone now needs a digital ID card on this RFID chip that they have implanted. If you don't get one, then you're going to miss out on your social security, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's always a case where, hey, you know, we have heard about this thing, and we're going to accept 100 volunteers who are willing to try it, and then we'll progress from there. So I think people's worries about, oh, we are entering a new kind of, you called it a new kind of Jim Crow, like a new kind of segregation, you know, the naturals versus the augmented. Yeah, the modified, the augmented, the clanks, as they're called in Deus Ex. You know, it's like, I don't think that people, at least from my understanding, need to worry about if this becomes some kind of new kind of segregation. I think it's more a case where we should really just keep an eye on people who decide to do it and hope that they do it understanding that they're, at least right now, especially right now, that there is going to be a risk. And if we see it becoming some sort of practice somewhere, I would be interested to see like how the rest of the world adapts to it.
You know, since it's on the topic of implanting chips,
Mm-hmm.
you know, there was a video that I sent to you. It was
Yep.
2 years ago, where people were going to this specific lady to have chips implanted in them to open up doors. One lady she was ill, so she had her medical records stored.
She had a lot of stuff in her. She had at least 3 implants in her.
Yeah, I know it. You know, she had I think she got an accident, and then her immune system
That
was
bottom right image is horrifying, by the way.
Sorry, bro.
No, I mean it's you know, at least right now it is what we're gonna see. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, we're seeing some people naturally adopt this.
Mm-hmm.
It's a part of being, you can say, cool, being convenient. Um, would you currently, as a man who's looked into this, would you go for this currently, or do you think this technology needs to be tested more, or do you think that we should remain more like for that lady, which we can understand she has so many issues that for her, you can say it's something that maybe is the best solution for her. But for the average person, she's like, bro, just, you know, leave it alone. What do you think about it? Do you think we should move forward in this route, or, you know, leave it alone?
I mean, to answer your first question, I wouldn't do it because right now I have no reason to. And yeah, it's in a state where right now we don't really understand the risk, or we understand that there is a risk, but exactly what that risk could entail. And there are people out there who are willing to undertake that risk to have these things, to have like these RFID chips and these storage devices stored under their skin. But much like the lady who was performing the surgeries, Genova, I forgot the last name she uses, Genova. She herself doesn't have any because as she said, yeah, like as she herself said, she doesn't have any because she has no use for it. And whether she was, you know, making excuses or like it was a cop out, or she genuinely, to her right now, her interest stops at helping other people achieve it. You know, like her, I don't have a reason to want it right now. It interests me as a part of a larger, I guess, image of what the future could look like. But for me, at this point, I have no reason to want it. Like, I don't need a chip, an RFID chip to unlock my door or unlock my 30-year-old car. You know, I don't need my credit card information on a chip because I have a card. So in terms of I what I would like to see is for the people who are willing and ready and not like encouraging or looking to get into these kinds of implants and augmentations, is I would like to see, how do I put this? I would like to see that they're noticed, and that persons who work in medical fields take more notice of people's desires to have these things done. So like I said, that we can have them done safely. Because I can imagine, like, looking at some of the images that you have up right now, like I am, and even the other lady who was interviewed as a part of the video, left anonym. She mentioned the first time she ever did it, she got a massive infection. Like that comes from doing these things at home, or maybe you're going to someone who doesn't have all the necessary training. And what I would like more than anything else is to see the risk mitigated. So even if it's a very niche thing to do as a form of body modification, like even body modification as we know it now, there are professionals who are good at doing it.
Right. And one step further than this, as fans of
Mm.
video games,
Mm.
of our favorite franchise of you and a close, almost favorite franchise of mine, DSX.
Mm.
With my
Yes.
guy Jensen.
Yes.
You know, I have a picture of him up here, so I gotta use a simpler image. But
Mm.
we saw he got in an accident and he was,
Hmm.
cyborged out.
Yep.
Do you think, we've seen some tests done for persons who have received injuries, just like he did in an individual
Hmm.
game? But do
Hmm.
you think there will ever be a time where a person with perfect limbs will go and
Hmm.
say, you know what, I don't want these anymore. I want a new hotness. Get rid of these and
Hmm.
give me those cyber limbs. And before we go there, we have a shot on Mr. Kelly in the chat. He said that last picture, and I'm going to flip back.
Was that the last one on Alpha 10?
Yo, I don't know what that is. That's the
Pre-alpha.
that's the Battlefield
0.
2042 beta or everything, man.
Damn straight.
Yeah. So, do you think you see that happening? Do you think we see people, say, you know what, get rid of these and give it a new Apple hotness?
I hate that you used Apple as an example, but yes, I do think so, because it's interesting that you use the example of Adam Jensen, because for anyone who played the Deus Ex games, specifically Human Revolution and Mankind Divided, he most notably, as the meme goes, he didn't ask for that. There was a terrorist attack. He lost use of much of his body. He was dying. He was given the cybernetic body by Sarif to save his life. He didn't want it. So it's interesting that he takes the opposite stance of the question that you pose, that if someone decided, you know what, I am asking for this, I want that cyber body, I 100% believe that we are going to see that, because we're seeing it now with people who are voluntarily going and getting what cannot be comfortable procedures. Because watching that video, Genova was using what I can only imagine was a drinking straw to implant this chip. Like, that needle that she was using, to use the word needle, is very, very, like, generous. So the fact that people right now in this current day and age, not even 2 years ago, you can't even imagine where it is now, but people 2 years ago were willing to get these procedures done. This one lady is loading herself up with different kinds of NFC and RFID chips. I think there will come a day when, in the future, especially people who want to push their own body's performance, and we could talk about the ethics of using cybernetics in something like athletic endeavors. But, you know, even if right now we don't see people necessarily lopping off limbs and getting prosthetics, because I believe that right now we're not in a state where a prosthetic seems better. But imagine in the future if you have your fully organic body and you're like, you know what? I want to be able to jump 20 feet. And these cybernetic legs are going to be able to make me jump 20 feet. So I'm going to amputate both my legs and get these cybernetic legs, and that's going to be me. I think there will be people like that. And I'm not saying that I necessarily I would be like that in the future because, like I said, right now I see no point in upgrading as it would be. But yeah, there are 8 billion people in the world. I'd imagine at least some of them would like to see what it's like to cyborg up, as you said.
I mean, there are some people who are willing to push the boundaries, and we see in like
Yeah.
you see in life with people. There's some people who resent tattoos; they hate them, and there's some people that inked up
Hmm.
from the skull to the toes. So
Yeah, like body mod, you see people with like all black body tattoo. Like it's not even tattooing as we understand it. It's
is it
they
paint?
just completely black out their skin and they get like
Do the eyeballs?
hardware all over their face. Yeah, they tat their eyeballs and they get their tongues split, and so it's like people are willing to push those limits even now. So I don't see why that would ever change.
All right, Mr. Kelly in the chat said it ID chip could be the way to identify could be the way to identify a person if you can't find
Hmm.
where they go. Um,
Who they are.
who they are, sorry, but
But that's what that lady was doing when she went to Genova. The one that you said had a lot of like physical conditions is like she was talking about. If she is unconscious and she's in an ambulance, she has a medical alert bracelet that says scan finger webbing. It goes to a web page with all her information and like any possible allergies, and it has her will. And so yeah, we're seeing that in practice now.
all right. So it is can that also be, as we said, trickle back to like a government. Let's say you want to go into a foreign country,
Hmm.
and they could be like, hey, if you want to come, but we gotta know who you are, where you're going.
Hmm.
Can you see that also being a possibility? I mean, we can let it break so you can say, well, if someone goes missing, you maybe could
Hmm.
trap them somehow and find them.
Hmm.
But I mean, can that also be implemented? Or could
Yeah, no.
a job say it, like, they
Mhm.
that complete of certain workplaces sorry, where they say they don't allow you to have proper restroom breaks or whatever.
Mhm.
Can a company then, go into that software and say, hey, we see how much you move, and I mean, it's so crazy, but
No, no, no. It's not that it sounds crazy. Like hearing the examples you're giving. Unfortunately, we're at a point where it seems like we're kind of already there with the way companies, at least many, especially large companies, tend to really dictate their employees' time and will do whatever they can to track them. I mean, I imagine Amazon would be one of the first companies to say, "Hey, this is the kind of thing we can use," because they always seem to be on the cusp of making their processes more quote unquote efficient to the bottom line, not efficient to the human resource. But this is the kind of thing that really does come down to like, what is your opinion of a company's right to essentially control the lives of their employees? And I don't believe in it, because I'd like, as I said before, I'd like to emphasize that I believe this should be a personal choice. But as you mentioned earlier, this harkens back to a situation that the world we're currently in, but that's different because that concerns the safety of public at large. But if you're talking about a company saying to someone, either you get this chip so we can track your every movement and we can track your bathroom breaks and we can
see how many boxes you
es-
lift.
yeah, exactly. If we can essentially monitor and dictate every part of the day once you are clocked in, or you lose your job, it's like that is where you start crossing a line, because that starts to infringe on someone's individual freedom. And it's not even like it's a case of considering public safety, because I believe people are so caught up in the idea of this is limiting my freedom, but I think it's important to understand how much does your freedom put society at risk. This is a case where if someone doesn't want to get a chip so you can dictate and manipulate them down to a granular level, that's when I think that it starts to become a problem.
But can someone argue that it's their firm, and if you want the job, you have to do as they say? Not saying I agree with it. I agree with you
No,
100%.
that is
But so
absolutely a
that's an
valid argument.
argument. Could be the current world situation going on. There are some people who say, hey, it should be person's choice, and that's that. And some people argue, well, it's the owner's business. So
Unfortunately, that is a valid argument because it is a private business. Just as much as it is their right to ask that of their employees. At the same time, you don't have to work for them. If you are fired, like if you don't want to do this, well, then you got to look for work somewhere else.
Mhm.
I think it takes a different stance when it becomes a case of government employees, because the idea of individual freedoms really more so extends to like people's interactions with governments, so as to prevent tyranny.
Yeah,
But
currently, yeah.
yeah, but when it comes to, if this is a privately owned company and management says you need to do this or you need to leave, then as far as I know, they have all right to say that, because that is the company. The company is deciding that this is where we're going in the future, and you can decide if you want to be a part of that or not.
Yeah, the only way legally around that is if the constitution of the country says, as an employee, because I know some countries have
Mm.
like we have labor laws here that there are certain
Mm.
things, even though you are a private company, you still cannot.
Right, there's some things you can't ask of your
Right,
employees, or demand of them rather.
right. So
Hmm.
you never know. That would be an issue that would be brought to the forefront of government. Maybe
And then it goes to a legal thing.
exactly.
Hmm.
How much control does the government have over a private business? So
Hmm.
we could be going down a slippery slope. But let's switch it up a little bit.
But there are always slippery slopes. But yeah,
Let's talk a little something a little different.
yeah.
Let's switch gears a little bit.
Mm.
We in the age we want to improve the planet, and
Hmm.
Mastercard teamed up with what's the name of the company now? Hold on. Is hold on. How do you name it? So it's
I see
do
Global Climate Action on the image. Is that the name of the company?
no, it got another name. Is
Mm.
do something some crap. Hold on, let me get the correct name. I had the name, I forgot it. I always remember names and then just forget the.
Me too, all the time.
I
I
get
had the
names in
names
my
of the
head
people in the video.
and I
Yeah.
just be like, yeah, I got your name, and I just be like, oh,
Yep. Completely
okay.
forgot.
Duconomy. Duconomy has Steve a MasterCard for a carbon footprint credit card. And
Okay.
the idea of it is instead of having a traditional like spending limit, you have like a,
Hmm.
a $5,000 limit or $7,000 big ballers like you. Um, Instead of that, your purchases will be limited to a carbon footprint. I'm not too sure how they do the calculations or not.
There's
And
probably some algorithm in
certain
there.
algorithm or whatever. And
Yeah.
after a certain amount, I think a card actually shuts off for your daily spend.
Oh shit.
Yeah, and I'm talking about the digital world, digital man.
Hmm.
Can this impact people who, let's say, for example, choose to live more in a rural society, for example, or more what people call in America suburban? And let's say you, for example, you live in the city, you
Hmm.
live in the Bronx, and then live in Westchester County. I mean, you probably got more money, but money
Hmm.
doesn't matter now anymore because I live further out. The delivery truck is further away from the center,
Hmm.
so I have to drive further to get to me to deliver the same product that I've bought that both of us have purchased.
Okay.
I know climate change is important to you. Do you think this is the right way to go? Should we have where you people's spending is cut due to carbon emissions, or do you think it should be more the companies themselves say, look, we are all it would take us a bit of a while, but we try to
Mm.
slowly make things greener and more efficient. We try to change our packaging. We try to make products
Hmm.
more repairable.
Hmm.
We try to maybe, or we may have to spend more, but we try to make our products last a bit longer. I know yeah, I know that one kind of hard, but
Mm.
do you think that should be taken, or do you think this is the way to go?
I think that I think that governments need to regulate companies. Like, let me start by saying what I flat out think should happen.
Mhm.
I think companies need to be regulated so as to engage in more environmentally friendly business practices. I think the idea that you are linking, because I don't quite fully understand how it works. So is it a case where you have your carbon limit as opposed to your credit limit set to this card?
It's carbon limit,
So
correct?
say you live in a suburban area, I live in the city. I live in an urban area. And we both order, let's say, a microphone
Mhm.
off of Amazon as an example.
Mhm.
We both order the same exact thing, all things being equal, but it takes less carbon emissions. There's less of environmental impact getting it to me than there is getting it to you. So what you're saying is that the limit applies to you, or does the limit apply to the company that sends it?
To me, it applies it in
So it applies to you because they have to send it further to you.
right. It's
I
on
think
your
that's
purchase.
I think that's stupid.
It depends on your purchases that you make.
Okay,
And
I think that's 100% stupid.
right,
But go
and
on.
I think it also applies to companies. So let's say, for example,
Mm-hmm.
you want a coffee house,
Mm-hmm.
and I come in there and I want to buy a cold brew, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know how he's doing. And you have
Mm-hmm.
two options available. You have one that's, let's say, is from Colombia. And then you have one that's in, I don't know, maybe in Ivory Coast or somewhere in Africa who makes coffee.
Like you have one that's fair trade, and you have one that isn't. One that's more sustainable than the other.
Or, yeah, or, yes, but I'm trying to use as in like one come from a further place than the other one.
Oh, okay. Well, let me not hijack your point. Continue
Right.
then. Sorry.
So, it was because this coffee, correct? Or Ghana, I think Ghana does coffee. I think Ghana does
Okay.
coffee. So let's say Ghana, then
I can't
Colombia.
remember. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I have the option of getting the roast from Ghana or the roast from Colombia. Let's say you charge me the same money.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say it's all, I don't know, $10 or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
since the one from Ghana took more carbon emissions to get to, let's say, Barbados,
Mm-hmm.
that one will impact more of my carbon emissions
Mm-hmm.
because it came further. Even though I'm in the same store,
Mm-hmm.
since it had to travel further, it would be more damaging to the environment. And
Mm-hmm.
therefore, this card would increase it would charge me more on the carbon limit side because it came from a further country.
Like it wouldn't cost you more money, but it would take more off your carbon limit.
Correct.
Yeah, I think that's a terrible idea because I think that's trying to address the problem from the wrong direction. It's like the argument of electric cars. Like, oh, electric cars are good because they don't give off emissions. Yeah, they're good, but the power that they're using to charge those cars still comes from largely fossil fuels and coal and environmentally damaging means. So it's a case where I understand the idea, but it's being done from the wrong approach, and it's not addressing the problem. It's like instead of something like I don't even know, I can't even say like an alternative that could work better, but I feel like it should, instead of your credit card determining how much damage you're doing to the environment by what you buy and cutting you off when you've reached a certain point, I think it should be a case where governments and just corporations as a whole. So let's leave government out of it. Just corporations as a whole, or at least out of my point, let me just not mention government. Corporations as a whole need to be regulated to a point where they are penalized. Let me say that they should be penalized for environmentally harmful practices. So using your example of the coffee house, if one coffee comes from South America, the other comes from Africa, one is undoubtedly more harmful to the environment, to order. I think it should be a case where to mitigate that, perhaps you invest in more, how do I put this? More efficient
Transportation.
Not like you fix the structures of the system that get those things in place instead of just trying to adjust
The user.
the tail end of it. Yeah, like the user end, because by putting this carbon limit on a card, the only part you're changing is the very tail end of it. It's like when you've reached the transaction, that's the only point you're ever putting any kind of regulation on it. I think instead you should look at the farming practices on the coffee plantations. You should look at the transport of the product. You should look at what goes into manufacturing the coffee, the harvesting, the roasting processes, looking at the treatment of the growers and the harvesters. Like, you need to address every other point in the chain instead of just addressing the end link of the chain, because by the time you get there, the damage has been done. Like if you're cutting off someone at their carbon credit limit, the damage is already done. What you need to do is approach it from throughout the path of the process, so that you can mitigate the damage before it already happens. So I think it sounds like a stupid gimmick that pretends it's addressing the issue, but it's not really addressing the issue. Like I'm sure if it were put into action, then we might see some kind of progress, but it really sounds like one of those things where it's not doing as much good as change in another area would.
Right. Because this is my thing with the whole current climate change movement. And I'm all for better technology and improving the environment, even as someone who loves big V8s and V12s. But I think we always come down to the end user. So it's Zach, change your habit, or change your habit. But we never really go to the corporation and say, hey, why don't you improve your habits? Why don't you try to make things more efficient? Like even with gasoline, you trying to tell me that these men can't sit down in a lab and try to make it that when it burns is not as damaging as it currently is? I feel with all the billions that get pumped into gasoline, somebody could come with gasoline and make it less harmful to the environment. But the thing is,
yeah, but then the CEOs have to get less money.
Exactly. So what do we do? You try to get me to maybe drive less, or you try to get me to buy an EV. But then if he doesn't sell the gasoline to me, but to the electricity company, and says, hey, we got this scarcity going on. Instead of charge you $4 a barrel, is we got to charge you 80. He still wins at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And he hasn't really changed his practices. So I think that's with the climate movement. I think that's what we also have to look at. It's all well and good to say, the individual change their lifestyle. And I think there are things that we should do also. I'm not saying that we shouldn't, try to buy things that are more recyclable, or try not to buy things that we have to throw 50 million pieces of plastic every year. But I still think we need to see more from the corporation, and not to punish I don't say punish, but have the individual have to change their lifestyle so much. And we also ought to keep it real. A lot of what we call bad practices have been created by who? These corporations. Like me and my dad were having a conversation, and he bought a phone last year. And the cellular company is calling him to say, hey, you want to upgrade? You want to upgrade? He's like, yo, the phone is not even a year old yet. But you're trying to get me looped into another contract so you can always keep getting that extra revenue on top to make more money. So what happens to the old phone?
Landfill.
So,
and that's e-waste, which is extra dangerous, which is especially dangerous.
Yeah, and I don't think what's the recycling process for e-waste?
I'm not even sure, but the problem is that most people don't even go about do it. They'll just put their phone in a drawer, or they might throw it away. A lot of people don't consider, hey, I should look for companies that take e-waste and recycle it. Most people, I imagine, aren't doing that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people put it in the drawer.
Yeah, exactly. But you can only have so much drawer space, and if people are upgrading their phones every 12 to 18 months, at some point, people are just gonna start throwing these things. Unfortunately, I have thrown phones away that have been sitting in drawers for years, and it's a case where, because where we live, we don't have anywhere that recycles e-waste. Exactly. Not as far as I know. Yeah, so it's what other options do we physically have on this island? But even places where e-waste recycling is an option, it's so much easier to just put it in a drawer or throw it in a bin. And you could say, well, it's just a phone, but these things add up. And I like that you basically encapsulated my point that companies have essentially guilted individuals into taking the responsibility of the environmental process. It's like, it's on you to recycle these things, or it's on you to eat less of this thing because it's bad for the environment. And like you said, I think if you believe in change, it's important to act upon the principles that you espouse, because At least for me, I know, for example, I try to eat less meat because I know, even though I'm one person, and me as one person cannot make a difference in how much climate change is occurring due to the meat industry, I know that in wanting to see change, I should at least practice my principle. Otherwise, that makes me a hypocrite. And, sometimes I don't always stay on the bandwagon, but for me to eat less meat or not eat like canned tuna because tuna are being overfished, I do that knowing that ultimately me being one person doing these things means nothing. It comes down to a massive fundamental change in all of these industries, in the meat industry, in the fishing industry, in the tech industries. Like you said, the planned obsolescence that goes into these devices, because the companies want you to buy a new model every year. Otherwise, they wouldn't come out with a new model every year, because they want it to be a case where they are making consistent revenue, if not more, year over year. And yeah, so and I believe anyone who really takes a moment to look at it, they realize, yeah, no, this really needs to come down to a massive systemic change of how companies are permitted to act, because right now they more or less can just go buck wild and be pumping out, whether it's pumping out new phones every year, be just building new factory farms, just fishing oceans to extinction, because profit is king. And these companies do a lot. They spend a lot of money to make sure that it stays that way. They spend a lot of money to make sure they can make more money doing it. But it is unfair to leave it at the end user. Like I said, to leave it at that last link of the chain. Even if every person decides, oh, I'm going to stop buying canned tuna, or I'm going to stop buying a cell phone every year, the companies are just going to adjust and start putting that energy and money into something else. Like you use the example of fuel. Oh, we're going to stop using gasoline because, it's damaging the environment. Watch oil companies find some way to shift into making every car a diesel making diesel the standard for vehicles now. So then that encourages the automotive manufacturers to make every combustion engine a diesel engine. It's like they're going to shift to make sure that they guarantee their profits in their avenues before they decide, you know what, we need to fundamentally change what they're doing for the better, because these companies, they don't care. And like you mentioned, these oil companies have billions of dollars, but it's easier, or rather they would much rather put that money into their pockets than invest it into changing the systems the system which within we live. Shit, I couldn't say anything just now.
I want to say something, because Charlie brought, he said like the Apple super fans, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this really got me annoyed. Remember when they started saying, hey, no more chargers in the box to save the planet?
Yeah, that was so much bullshit.
I was just like, whoa. If you want to save the planet, first things first, why do you not come and say, hey, bring back your old charger, right? And we give you a new one because it's more efficient. If you want to
go with USB, you fucks.
Or don't let me start on that one. If you really care about the planet, you would say, you know what? We take the old ones and recycle them. And we give you a new one. You know why? Because it's more efficient. It burns less electricity. So then you'll be helping the planet on the back and the front end. But no, you don't want to make money. And that's the problem that pisses me off. Don't use the environment to make money. That's my problem.
They're insulting people's intelligence.
But people bought into it, line and sinker. Like, I just...
Like, it's not even a case of Apple fanboys. They're just people who like look at it and say, hey, this is a thing that other phone companies would be doing. But because it's easy to say, hey, this company is thinking for me and it's presenting the solution. But like I said, anyone who takes a minute to really look into it realizes, no, this is not changing anything, because all it's doing is just putting more money in the pockets of either Apple or people they've licensed to sell third-party peripherals, because now you've got to buy your power brick extra. And I will talk about the fact that if Apple is so concerned about the environment, they should fucking change their ports to USB, because the standard through all devices that is more sustainable than them having some proprietary bullshit. But
Yeah,
that's the
I
key
think
word
it's too
here:
right. If I
proprietary.
buy an iPad from you, a Pro, and then buy
Hmm.
an iPhone Pro, why do I have to have two different cables? Again, if you care about the environment, I would just need one cable. I could charge my
Because they don't.
laptop, my phone. It's money.
Hmm. They
But it's
100% don't
but it's
care.
me that's supposed to change and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to have to shift and buy something extra.
Hmm.
And again, until and also we like to see a government should do this, government should do that. It also condones us as the individual.
Yes,
We have to start saying no. You have to change, and
because government should be representative of its people.
and we have to be willing to say, look, we really go through some pain for you
Hmm.
to change your act. But you know
Yeah.
what? As long as people can have their conference, they're not going to change. They're just going to go the okie doke.
Because it's so much easier. People don't want pain.
Exactly.
Yeah. No,
So
but I like that you use that example because me talking about the things that I do it because I hope that at some point I can maybe encourage someone or inspire someone to make change. And what I'd like to see is change happening on a large scale, person by person. So if I'm one person and I say to the guys, I've been eating less meat because I think it's good for the environment. If I could inspire one of you to start doing it, and then you mention that to somebody else, and etc., and then we see change happen there. But the problem is that it's so slow, and we're at a point where right now we can't really afford to wait much longer for this change to happen.
and
So,
also too, my thing
mm,
with both the vegan and the meat
mhm,
industry, I think the meat
mm,
industry. You see, the problem is they wanted to make so much profit. You basically kill the
mhm.
small farmer.
Yeah,
Which, if you really want to save the environment, you'll push for the small farmer to come back because he's going to
yeah,
be less damage on the environment, and those
mhm,
people actually care about the animals a lot. So the food quality will be better. People have better nutrients. People
mhm.
will have to go to the doctor less often, but we know you don't care about that. And
And even
also,
then, that creates a more environmentally. Just to say this before you continue, not sorry to cut you off, but it even creates a more efficient route between from supplier to
well,
consumer.
exactly,
Because when you've got these smaller farmers within their communities, they can provide directly to, I guess, abattoirs who will then provide to the supermarkets. And okay, this is coming from a member of my community or someone reasonably local, and that bolsters economy. But continue.
exactly. And also with
Yeah.
some people say, hey, the vegan stuff or whatever, cool. But when
Hmm.
you are ordering something that comes to the other side of the world,
Yeah.
are you really helping the planet? It sounds good on paper. It's almost just like the
Hmm.
iPhone or the charger in the box. It sounds good.
Hmm.
And you know me, I'm more into a lot of natural foods and stuff and try to eat a lot more vegetables as well. But
Hmm.
if you order something from friggin' Indonesia, you can't tell me better than the guy who eating beef from America. I mean, like, bro, that's a lot of transportation you have to
It's
do.
almost like it's canceling it out. Like any goodwill that you make by eating vegetables, like that's canceled out by the fact that it took God knows how many cargo ships to get those vegetables here. Like all the damage that has done.
And don't get me started on veggie burgers. We don't know what the hell is happening. Shits, man.
Listen, I make a mean black bean burger that
Hey,
you should
shout,
really
shout out
try
to Zach,
sometime.
shout out to Chef Zach, man. We have Kelly said, look at the framework laptop.
The framework laptop,
I
yes.
presume this is a laptop that is modular.
It's a modular laptop. I was familiar with the framework, Omar, and there's actually a similar phone called the Fairphone. Um, I did hear about both those through the Linus Tech Tips YouTube channel, and yeah, so the framework, I'm not sure of to what level it is modular, but my understanding is you might be able to swap out peripherals like maybe webcams, ports. I don't know if it goes as far as like being able to change out your keyboard or your touchpad, but the idea is basically it's meant to extend your life and upgradability of your device. And on a similar note, the Fairphone is a phone that encourages right to repair and your ability to upgrade your phone. So that if you need a new USB port, it has a modular USB port. It has a modular speakers and modular camera modules and mic modules, so that it's got a removable battery. So I
Bring that
think the
back.
only
Bring that
things
back.
that bring it back, man. The only parts of the Fairphone that are not modular are the USB, not the USB, the SIM and memory card ports, and it has a micro SD card port. Those are the only things you cannot change yourself, but every other part of it, it's meant to encourage the right to repair, and increase the longevity of having these devices. So I believe that that is the direction that consumer electronics should go in. But the problem is that we are so entrenched in
New, the new hotness.
like, yeah, buy one now, and then when the new one comes out, you buy that one, and it's going to be so hard to change. And I really believe that these kinds of more sustainable devices are going to remain niche for a very long time. But I'm very happy to see that they're a thing, because the Fairphone right now is in its fourth iteration, and I believe, I can't remember how long they release each new version, but like, if their production cycle is like every 3 years, this is just me guessing, I have no idea, but if that's like 12 years already
Mhm.
of a new sustainable standard of consumer electronics, it's a start. I honestly hope that more companies, and I mean like larger, more well-known electronics companies, start to adopt that kind of practice. Like, I hope this is a catalyst to seeing this become the mainstream approach, but I'm not going to be optimistic about it.
Me neither. As I said, I think that has
Hmm.
to come more from the consumer side rather than the company side. But it's almost a bit of a status symbol.
Like, speaking with their wallet, like, it really has to be a case of, this. I'm enough people have to say, this is what I'm supporting and this is what I'm not supporting,
Yeah,
and
but
that's really the only way we're going to see change.
yeah, but it's just and not just with the iPhone. You got that
Hmm.
new you got the new Note 20, and that's the new thing.
Hmm.
You got the new is the S22 coming out next year, or that's the new
Hmm.
Samsung boy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
You got the new
yeah.
iPhone.
It's not
Yeah,
exclusive to
it,
Apple. Yeah, it's not exclusive to Apple fanboys.
yeah. It's almost it's like a sneaker culture, but
Hmm.
it's like a tech culture.
Yeah.
It's like, a guy, he buys every new GPU that comes out. Every, I was like,
Hmm.
bro, like the man had like four 3090s already. He just bought like, I just like, Jesus Christ.
He's like, that doesn't need to be that way, but I genuinely don't know like what we could possibly do. Like, I know for myself, I don't need the nicest newest thing, and I'm happy with something that works and can keep working for as long as it's feasible. But people, like, I don't want to generalize, because that's never helpful,
But to be fair to
but I
him,
really
he doesn't
would
sell it
like to
off to
see.
some other body else. He gives it away to someone who uses
Well,
it. So I
I
get
guess
that.
that's a way to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at least he's still not like putting it in a box and sitting it down or throwing it in a landfill. So I get at least
Yeah,
someone's using it.
exactly. So it actually is. It does have life after purchase, which this is something that I wouldn't mind seeing more of. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, people's fascination or people's uh affection or affinity towards having the nicest, newest things. It really needs to be a global cultural change to help people as a whole recognize that, hey, maybe it's better if, instead of buying a new phone every year, I buy this one phone and I can buy the parts and change them myself, or I can pay someone else to change it
Mhm.
for much less than it would cost for a new phone, like much less than a new phone would cost. And just encourage people to approach things from that perspective. But I genuinely don't know if we could ever get people as a whole to look at things that way.
It's that new dopamine hit that people just love. So
Yeah, and people love getting, like, I love getting nice new
me
things,
too.
but
I can't lie, but it's not as important to me as like most people though.
and you got to draw the line somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need a phone. Like I don't need a phone every year. Like, I could use a new phone right now. I think I've had this one for about 3 years now. But
You might
it's
might
like,
know it's still going pretty strong. So I'm like, okay,
there you go.
I
It's like,
want.
you really don't need to be on a constant upgrade cycle. It's the same thing with cars. Like, people lease a car, and then when the new model year comes out, they'll, I guess, sell that one,
Trade
or
the car back and
trade
get a new
it
one.
trade it in, yeah, to get the new one. It's like, but this car exists, and it has a lifespan beyond a year. It's
But
crazy. It's rough.
again, it's a
It's
status.
disappointing.
It's a status, but
It's status, yeah, yeah. It's all part of status.
yeah. And before we go, we gotta look at something a little
Mm.
darker, man. You see, I got a picture of your favorite video game out there, Cyberpunk.
Mm, of
And we
course.
see, we're going back to the end with the digital man and all this stuff.
Yes.
We see the guys with the guns here. Um, can you see in a future where, not no, but maybe we live in a corporate world or some government who,
Mm,
when we get the chips in and we use it for good, try to switch it on us and
mhm,
they track us down and it's
mhm.
play or die. You know what I mean? You can't run anymore. You know what I mean? Obviously, you yank it out your body, but
Yeah.
or the some guys like Elon Musk talk about the Neuralink in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine now it wants to be like Suicide Squad. You do as I say,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah,
gotta take a
blow your
dirt
head
nap.
off.
You gotta take a dirt nap.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, how do we as citizens, and I know it sounds crazy and a little conspiratorial, but how do we as
Mm-hmm.
citizens stop this from happening? Because right now we're seeing the current situation globally, and I'm seeing a lot of infighting online.
Mm-hmm.
And me and you are guys, we always do our little back and forth, but we always say, what? It's you
Mm-hmm.
thing, live your life. And we're not currently seeing that. It's very toxic online. They kind of start going on Twitter a lot, it mute a lot of words. It's just nasty.
Mm-hmm.
I see
It
people
is.
from both sides saying people should drop them dead. I'm like, come on, man. Some people say
Yeah.
you should got right to live. I'm like, come on. So how do we as people prevent something like this from happening? And could we be in a world who is also digitalized, but we
Mm-hmm.
can also bring it back to be kind of spiritual? You know what I mean? We
Like a
we
return to your roots kind of thing.
we kind of, even though we have the technology, we
Mm-hmm.
still respect the individual. We still show a love to the individual. If you look at a lot of those native tribes,
Mm-hmm.
to me, they have a lot of love in their society that we don't have. It is a lot of hatred and animosity right now.
Mm-hmm.
How do we go down this path? How do we first thing first stop this? We start from getting tyrannical,
Mm-hmm.
and then how do we also try to show a love to our fellow man? We can get dark and then we can try to end on a positive note.
Okay. Well, I may disappoint you in at least one of those regards, but I will say I'll looking at the photo you have there of trauma team,
Mm-hmm.
well armed and ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
I talking about the idea of having an implant in you that say a government or a company is able to track you down. First and foremost, trauma team is a public service. Just using this as an example.
Mm-hmm.
The reason trauma team exists is for the elite. If they are hurt or injured, that they can be immediately tracked and airlifted to receive their premium medical care.
Mm-hmm.
And the cost of that becomes you are now able to be tracked at any possible juncture. If you are hurt, they'll know it. If you're sick, they'll know it. And like you said, comply or die. Like there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide anymore. The problem is that we're kind of inching towards that as it is, because I remember when the idea of vaccination came up.
Hey, easy. I don't want to get shut down.
I didn't say what it was for. I didn't say what it was for.
Still, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, my bad.
Hokey.
The idea of
Punch.
the pinch.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of the pinch came up, and I think people were nervous because it might have a tracker in it. But
And there's a very popular video on I think the channel's name Motherboard. And if you see the comment sections of that video, a lot of people are like, whoa. Yeah, because it deals with nanotechnology. I mean, that's another
Right.
talk about another time, but go ahead.
Like we don't need drinking straws for some of these things. But I think the issue with getting the pinch is that we're already walking around with trackers in our pockets.
Mm-hmm.
Like most adults in the developed world
Mm-hmm.
are going to be walking around with an active homing beacon in their pocket, in their hand, near their head. Yeah, it's like, so we're already kind of inching towards that. And I think to ask if there's ever a way that we can keep this from happening, I don't think there is, because as time goes on and phones are already very ubiquitous, and as we start to integrate more of our lives and devices into being interconnected, Bluetooth everything, smart homes, smart TVs, it's like we are constantly adding more ways for us as people to be tracked, even if we don't get some kind of homing chip put in our arm. It's like we've already created an environment where essentially someone can always be aware of our habits and location and our activities at any given time.
Mm-hmm. It's like could be
So-
house and you could have a security camera and it's someone
There you go. Exactly. You know, and you were talking earlier.
But you got it and they could find me.
Exactly. You know, the idea that a lot of these baby monitors now are being hacked, or that you can hack like these Ring doorbells, And you had mentioned earlier the idea of someone like hacking into your augmentation, and I had forgotten to address it. It's that we are creating this environment where we are constantly surrounded with these more and more necessary pieces of technology. Like, try and get through modern life without a phone. Try and find a TV nowadays that's not a smart TV, so you're always available to be advertised to. We're seeing like fuel pumps. Their screens in America have ads on them now. It's getting harder to get further away from the idea of an always on society, to use the idea of like Xbox Connect. Like when the Xbox One came out first came out, and a whole point of controversy was how the Kinect would always be on.
Right.
And I think some people were concerned, was like, but this feels like an invasion of privacy. But at this point, we are now allowing these devices that are always on to be an integral part of our lives.
How to cut pasta.
Yeah, there you go. So it's like,
right? Like you know what Aston White is like? Is get creative about everything. That thing legit scares me. And I mean, I got phones and whatever, but something about that particular one is just. But then again, I got a phone.
Wait, which one is that? Sorry, I had
Alexa, play.
Oh, Alexa, yeah, exactly. It's because you really feel like it's listening to you, even though like Google and Siri are the same thing. This one device that is dedicated to hearing your voice, trigger it. It's like, shit, that thing is really, and that thing is designed to listen for me, because you can even go on your phone and turn off Siri and turn off Google Assistant. If you have an Alexa in your house, it needs to be listened to. It's there to be listened to.
Exactly.
So it's like it is quite terrifying,
And also
like,
think about a TV, a smart TV. I bet that does always listen to you too, unless you unplug it.
Exactly, but everything now, unless you take the battery out your phone, which you can't even do now, unless you got a fair phone.
Yeah.
It's like, unless you take the battery out your phone, it's always probably listening, because a lot of phones now, when they turn off, they don't really turn off unless the battery is dead.
Yeah.
Because of a lot of phones now, like if the battery dies, it dies at like 3%, the phone shuts off. But if you have an alarm set, the phone will come on at the time the alarm goes off, and then like power back off. It goes into an extended sleep mode so that it's able to come back on. It's able to be listening. It's able to be active. So it's like a lot of our devices now, we are completely unable to get away from them. It's like even my laptop. I keep my laptop webcam covered, because if I didn't, every time it would be up, it has a view of my face or whatever's going on in my environment. And if I need to use it, then I'll take the tape off. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, the idea that we could escape a future where we can always be tracked, I don't think that's going to happen, because we are day by day more progressively allowing and encouraging an always tracked lifestyle. So that, like I said, unfortunately, even though we're taking this in what could be a dark direction, and hopefully a more light one at the end, I don't think that I can really help you with that light one, because you even asked, how do we get back to the idea of like this brotherly love that we seem to be missing nowadays, how people have become more divided and more tribalistic. The problem is that humans have always been very tribalistic. Like you mentioned the idea of native tribes, and tribes have been a thing for hundreds of thousands, millions of years. The problem now is that we are more interconnected than ever. So in the past, where tribes would only conflict with each other when they physically came face to face, now we live in a world where, because you have the internet and social media and message boards, these tribes are always aware of each other in real time. So now, and the fact that the internet still has a measure of anonymity to it, like you're not really anonymous on the internet anymore. But unless someone's really willing to go digging, like you can have a Reddit account or a Twitter where people don't know your real name and they don't know your face and they don't know, where you live, and you have this sense of power to you. So you really feel encouraged to be your most aggressive self. So that like further enhances the tribalism, and even then, people with their Facebook accounts with their real names, that doesn't stop them,
Exactly. Because what we could do, you could say, hey, in the current situation, let's say you are pro for it, and I said, nah, I'm messing with it. Well, you deserve to die. What I could do to you online? I can't slap you around your face.
Exactly.
No, you even tell me that. You read. All right, bro. We're back turn. You might say he's crazy. But
Until someone like goes to your boss and says, "Yeah, your employee said this. You really have no repercussions for your shit
exactly.
attitude." Yeah.
So I,
It's scary and it's depressing, and like, again, to leave this on a dour mood, I kind of have stopped trying to, like, I still want to be the better person. I want to be a better example than what I see. I still try to be positive and understanding and as objective as I can towards people and their opinions. I know the ones that I don't agree with, and I know the ones that I think, I hate to use the word right and wrong, but I know the ones that I don't like and the ones that I think are harmful. And but even in that, I try to still tell people that I think their opinions and thoughts are harmful, but remain respectful because they are still people. But I'm done. I don't think I ever really did it, but I'm done feeling like I would like to see other people get better. I once again don't want to be a hypocrite, and I want to be the example of what I see. But I mean, largely, I don't think people are going. I think people are just going to keep getting worse, unfortunately. So I think this tribalism is going to get more intense as we get more and more interconnected as time goes on, and as you know, the vocal minority, because it's often like I feel like the majority of people are really just trying to live their lives, and then you've got these really loud.
peace. I think most people just want peace.
Yeah, like they just want to go on with their lives, and you've seen that with people who are pro aren't pro because it's some sort of point of passion. It's that, if this what's helped me get back to normal, then yeah, it's gonna help me and the world at large get back to normal. Then you got the people who are against, and they're really loud about it, and they're very aggressive, and they're very violent, and they're fighting with the people. They're fighting with the aggressive pro people.
Right.
And you've kind of got everyone else getting caught in the middle, and they're just like, wow, I really just want life to go back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be seen in anything. Tribalism applies to the most ridiculous of subjects. We talked about football, consumer devices, iPhone versus Android. Exactly. Football clubs.
Oh my god.
Exactly. Like people with iPhones will insult people with Androids because they think, it's a crap phone. It's not even a phone. It's an operating system. That's a whole other.
Yeah, as if it's
diatribe
or whatever. Like they don't see the improvement.
Yeah, no, it's like honestly, I think it's gonna get worse. Like as time goes on, people are gonna get more divided into their schisms, and the best we can do is, for those of us who are trying to find some kind of peace, is be the peace we want to see. Like we can still have opinions, we can still have passions, we can still have thoughts. But I think what we shouldn't do is forget that these are still people, and we should pay respect to the fact that these are people like us, and they have their right to their opinion, whether we agree with it or not. And if those opinions can be harmful, and if they're rooted in objectively incorrect information, as a lot of these things are, we can try to either educate them, and if they're not willing to listen, like, I don't know, hopefully address it in a way that can mitigate any possible damage.
Yeah, I think the best thing is for us to come and accept difference. And again, that's hard. There are a lot of people, they want to be around the same. They want to be around the familiar. Most people don't want to be around the different. And I
think some people just want to fight, to be honest.
I think a lot of people just want to be right. I don't know if it's fight. I think they want to be right.
There are people that actively seek conflict, though. Definitely not most, but a lot of people just are looking for conflict.
Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
I don't know. And as we say, we behind a computer screen, you could obviously say you want to fight because what's the consequence? Mm-hmm. Nothing.
Yeah, the dude's not going to knock at your door the second you say it. Like, all right, let's square up.
Yeah, but
swing first.
And plus, with the current work situation we're in, a lot more people are home. They're not going outside.
Yeah,
as much as they used to. So
everyone's all pent up at home.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunately, I think it's going to get worse. But I'm optimistic. I hope. Maybe in long run, people will eventually say, like, this is stupid. We're going to go through a war, hopefully not. But I hope it's something people say, no, this is just dumb. I'll put it to the side. But I think it's going to take 30, 40 years.
You're much more optimistic than I am.
I know. I
think it's downhill from here.
Well, trying to call the aliens, I got to another planet. But on that note, thanks for coming on, Zacchariah. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, King.
Yeah, thanks to Callie in the chat. He's
always Omar, always the support.
Yeah, he's a big supporter of the show. So thanks for coming on. And yeah, we'll be back next time on the Anything Goes podcast.
Adios.
All right, that's that.